You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Hello everybody and welcome back to this month's edition of Anime Crash Course. Today we have our old regular, we have Keith.
Hello, how are you doing?
Wonderful to have you, Keith. And we have a very, very special guest with us now. You've seen him from the Nerd to Know radio show, the Wrestling Rewind, and from The Dark. We have Darragh from the network.
Hey Kev, thanks for having me on. I'm here.
Yay.
After all the promises of just
after all the promises, after completely bailing on Steins Gate, you're here.
Yeah, well, it's funny, right? In the same week that Bryn's show appears out of the ether, I'm also able to do the show. So it's like, there you go. The two biggest promises have been made. So
You did it.
We've got to find new empty promises to make.
Exactly.
And it's a great thing you're here because we are here to talk about a very exciting anime. It being now the month of October, we are going full on spooky mode, and we are talking about the horror cult classic anime Hellsing Ultimate. So to go into a bit of background about Hellsing now, before I actually begin, I'm just going to throw this out there that this, more than any other episode of Anime Crash Course, I'm going to just put a big old content warning up top here, because this show deals in just extreme gory violence and has multiple instances of pretty graphic sexual assault. So, like, if that does not fly for you, this series ain't it. Sorry to see you go, but just to give everyone a heads up at home there. Now, I suppose for those of you that might not know, what is Hellsing? So, Hellsing is originally a manga published by the author Kota Hirano in Young King Hours manga magazine back in 1997 and ran all the way up to 2008 and follows the Hellsing organization in England along with their lead agent, who is the vampire king Alucard, as they eradicate all forms of supernatural and fiendish threats along, worldwide. So from there, obviously, manga was a smash hit. The series was greenlit for a 13-episode anime adaptation in 2001 by Studio Gonzo and was directed by Umanosuke Ida. This is not the adaptation we are actually going to be talking about today, though. The adaptation we will be talking about is the 2006 Redux edition Hellsing Ultimate. So before we kind of dig into Ultimate, I want to ask you guys, have either of you actually watched the original?
Yeah, that's how I started. That's what I found first.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I found first. Because around this time, 2006 is when the remake came out?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually had seen the first one before the Redux came out. So around the same time, and I'll be drawing lots of comparisons to this. I was like super into a series called Trinity Blood, really into Trinity Blood. So I was like, oh wow, okay, Hellsing is pretty much just Trinity Blood, but from a Protestant perspective. Literally, that's what it is.
Oh,
that's
what it is.
No, that is so apt.
Yeah.
It is. That's what it is. Because Trinity Blood is okay. So for anyone who hasn't seen Trinity Blood, right? It's the exact same idea, but it's based in a post-apocalyptic world where the Vatican is like the head of everything, and their supernatural group that basically nuns and priests who are vampires go out and take out different supernatural beings and stuff like that. It's class.
So
but
it's
the main
Hellsing.
antagonist is the Protestant religion.
So you're telling me
fight Hellsing,
you're telling me that Trinity Blood is Hellsing from the point of view of the Iscariot.
Pretty much, yeah. And the thing about it is, there's actually a group in the show that will fight, and they're like the the antagonist to the Vatican. And then when I finish the show, I'm like, oh cool, I watch Hellsing. I'm like, oh my god, this is literally just but backwards.
Okay,
So
I think we might have a bit of a dive into that then a little later on when we're talking plot. But Keith, have you ever watched the original?
No, I think I saw 1 or 2 episodes, but I think it was actually Ultimate after watching it. I think I just watched the first 2 episodes at my friend's house a couple of years ago, but obviously there was such a gap between episodes coming out that I never followed up. So I don't think I saw any of the original, but I knew what it was for years. So I was like, oh, that's the silly vampire show.
Not the American one, the weird Japanese one.
Yeah. Actually, my argument with my friend was that I preferred a Vampire Hunter D over it, so I wouldn't watch the rest of Hellsing.
Oh, you are so incredibly purist, aren't you?
16-year-old.
To be fair, Vampire Hunter D is far superior. That does need to be said, but still.
I will put up my blind spot, and I have never watched a Vampire Hunter D anime. I've seen bits of it. It looks incredible. Never got it.
I can thank my guitar teacher for being like, hey, you got to check out Vampire Hunter D. I'm like, why? And he goes, here, just watch this. So in between crazy jazz chords and random metal, there was Vampire Hunter D.
That sounds like a Saturday. So, so with the original Hellsing anime then, so that was produced across 2001, only ran for about 13 episodes. By this point, obviously, as I said, the manga ran to 2008. So this only got a fifth of the actual source material. So, like a lot of these sorts of adaptations, it had to kind of make up an ending on the fly and just kind of run its series. And I, having watched it, I quite enjoyed the ending. And I really enjoyed this series when I saw it much, much later on after its release. Which, side note, if you would actually like to watch the original Hellsing anime, it is available for streaming on Funimation. But moving on, fans of the manga then got a more faithful adaptation to the source material in the form of it's difficult for me to say 2006's Hellsing Ultimate, because this is where I want to get into the absolutely bizarre production cycle of this anime. Because Hellsing Ultimate is a 10-episode series, but each episode runs from the better part of 40 minutes to an hour, so near movie length and movie quality, frankly, in terms of production. But this was produced and serialized over the course of the better part of about 8 years, finalizing in 2014, with each of these episodes or block of episodes being released yearly. And even to the point of, after certain quarters of episodes, even switching studio hands and directorial hands. So this is actually fascinating to find out that you kind of watched this from the beginning. Darragh, I only watched this after the fact. What was that production cycle like as a viewer?
Well, see, this is it. There used to be a series, how I started expanding out my anime knowledge. There was a thing, a weekly magazine, monthly magazine called Manga Force, where they just release manga, and that's how I really started kind of getting stuff from the manga series studio. That's when I started kind of really getting deep into it and having a look around. But around the same time, Borders closed down. Right? Remember Borders? Do you guys remember Borders?
Yep.
I think that was before
the
me.
bookstore.
Out in Blanche.
All right, so out in Blanche, yeah. So there used to just be this huge. All right, yeah. Well, in Blanchardstown, there's this huge bookstore. Imagine, the size of Chapters in town, but bigger again. I had DVDs, I had everything. It was class, but it closed down during the first recession of our lifetime in 2008. And I went in and bought the entire history section, the entire anime section, and then I went in and bought all the anime DVDs I could buy. So if you're ever wondering where all the DVDs come from in my room and downstairs in the library, that's where, thanks to Borders closing down, I literally just bought shelves and shelves, because it wasn't it was expensive. It was we're talking 10% of what it known by the end, and I had mates that worked there as well, health stuff. So that's how I kind of a bunch of the early run of the new Hellsing Ultimate. But it was annoying because you're wait, hold on. where's the rest of it? And again, the internet as well still wasn't really like, you still had kind of dial-up, and we like around that time you were still just kind of going into broadband, so you still had to look around. But I just remember sitting there going, where's the rest of it? And then you realize, oh wait, it keeps going, because I had already seen the earlier one, which was, even though it was cut down, it was a full kind of, well,
season.
with BJ, it was a full story. Yeah, like the 2001, 2002, and it was a full kind of like story. But when you watch the first, at least that kind of had some element of completion or whatever, you know. But
it
the way
had an arc.
The Redux was done. Yeah, it had an arc, but when the Redux was done, as you said, they were like movies. So the first DVD I got had the first two on it, and then nothing else. And that was it until I found the rest of them a couple of years later.
Jeez, I'd say it was sickening.
Confusing.
I'd say it was sickening, considering those first two just cover what's already been covered in the original.
That was it, and that's why I kind of put it off for a while. So, like, in preparation for this show, was the first time I sat down and watched the entire thing, you know, as it was supposed to be done, instead of just, as you said, bits and pieces, for Vampire Hunter D. But yeah, like, fair play to anyone who had the patience to stick through it. But for me, I'm like, if I catch it, I catch it. But I'm going to default back to the one that's already there. And then again, Trinity Blood was there. So that's what I'd always watch when I wanted to watch my church vampires.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I think we'll probably start getting into the show now. But just I suppose for clarity's sake, just to give credit where credit is due. So Hellsing Ultimate, the first 4 episodes were produced by Studio Satellite and produced by Tomokazu Tokoro. Then 5 through 7 were produced by Madhouse, who we've already covered as doing One Punch Man, except this was way before One Punch Man. And that was produced, and that was directed by Hiroyuki Tanaka. And then the final run of episodes 8 through 10 were produced by Studio Graphinica and directed by Yasuhiro Matsumura. And I think what I found fascinating when I realized that, you know, the production cycle just changed so many hands and even changed directors, was how consistent the style ended up being across the whole run. I never would have thought that it would have changed directors. Now, obviously, I found that it definitely the quality improved when it moved over to Madhouse and Graphinica, but you know, I would have just put that down to budgetary expanding.
The difference between different studios' approach, it's almost unnoticeable. Like, I really couldn't tell who did what. It wasn't until after the fact when I was like, oh, each episode has a different has a different studio name at the end.
I think, like, as well, the gap in production as well is also kind of, it's not like super obvious, but it's more kind of noticeable when it swaps between studio, because it's like, right, the animation is a little bit different here, the way they edit's a little bit different, the runtime kind of jumps around as well. Like, you know, I think at most the biggest one is maybe an hour, but the rest of them are all like, actually, you know, the biggest one, sorry, is 70 minutes. That's the end.
But you kind of expect that from the ending.
Weirdly.
Like, I think like all the changes you would have just kind of come to expect just from almost the production time. Honestly, I that's kind of what I would have chalked it up to. Like, it's as far as a cohesive unit, I wouldn't have known it had changed so many hands. Maybe that, like, again, I couldn't really find this in my research, but there could have been a production committee keeping coherence through all these things, and then the studios were just kind of licensing reasons. But that's conjecture here or there. But
well, I'd say that, you know, on a project of this scale, they'd probably have to have some kind of Bible, you know, of things that they can kind of do and things they can't do, which is relatively standard, I suppose.
Oh yeah, and I think from what I could find out, like, Kota Hirano himself was involved, at least as far as an advisory role in the production of it. But I think that's more than enough on the production of this series. Let's get into it. So before we start asking about plot details, I just want to ask you guys a big question. Did you guys watch this subbed or dubbed?
I always watch it dubbed. Always
yeah.
watch
Yeah?
anime dubbed.
You're a dub loyalist.
Yep. Well, see, I'm usually doing about 6 things at once. So if I have to read, I can't do one of those things. So it's
That's
fine.
fair. That's fair.
It's fine.
That's about the mood I had with this one as well. I watched the dub myself, and I just kind of did it while I was researching various other bits, and like if I have the time to really dive into a show, I tend to watch it subbed. But the dub most of the time can do in a pinch.
I also watched the dub, and I just watched it because I'd heard in the past that it had like a historically great dub, and I didn't find it like amazing, but it didn't tarnish the show at all. I liked it.
I definitely think by 2000 and again like 2006 to 2010 standards, it is a very good dub because dubs were very poor at that time. Like I think Funimation were only just getting their foot in the game as far as like an in-dubbing studio, and other things were just garbage. Now I will say,
Yeah, like it depends, I suppose. Like, it wasn't great. I think like the more internet, the more internet we got, the better things became. It seems.
oh yeah,
But
no,
like,
the court of
I
public
was
opinion.
used to like like I was used to terrible dubs. So I'm like, look, it's fine. This is just what anime is. So yeah, I'll still watch it sub sometimes, but I'm happy enough with. Like, I think it adds to the charm sometimes.
There
Where, like,
is a-
Oh yeah.
There is a bit of that. Because we're kind of judging it now from a 2020 standard, where dubs have far exceeded what would have been the early 2000s standard in terms of performance. Like it has its cracks and it has its faults, especially when the actors who are definitely American are pulling off a variety of European caricatures to mix to middling success here and there. But like
The German accents.
the German accents. The German accents are wonderful at how cartoonish they
Yeah,
are.
the German accents
It's
are
the
great.
British accents that got me.
Yeah.
You know what I'd say is it's because, again, like with the voice actors, they probably had like a set time. It's not like now where there was an interview, not an interview, a couple of years ago in DCC. There was an interview or a panel with the guys who did all the stuff for Yu-Gi-Oh! And they were saying that they used to have to go in and do them all at once, so it'd be blocked out, and then you had to get it ready. Now they can just do it in their house and send it over. So I think that's kind of the big thing as well, like the cost of this. So here, lads, we have 2 days. Go in and do the best that you can. And that's probably the way. So I'm willing to cut it a little bit of slack, but the German accent's hilarious.
As I said, like
So
I'm judging it
because they
from the
just have
standards.
no idea how to do it.
Oh, it's wonderful. Like, and I think again, there's considering how over the top this show gets. What I found grating at the start did kind of gather on its own charm as it went on. When I just realized how absurd things got.
Absolutely.
Now, in saying that, like I as much level critiques against its dubbing, there are some truly standout performances, particularly in Crispin Freeman's Alucard, who has that cool, calm, collected. I truly hate to put it this way, but for lack of a better way of putting it, coolness factor.
Yeah.
And I really thoroughly enjoyed Victoria Harwood's performance as Sir Integra Fairbrook Wingate's Hellsing. She just brought a gravitas to that role that felt more sincere than anyone else in that cast.
It's like she's the best part of the whole
Absolutely.
show.
Yeah, I think
it's just in with her. It's just like, sorry, go on.
I was going to say now that I suppose now we're here, we'll kind of dive into characters, but absolutely, just Integra is probably my favorite character in this, because while all of this over the top vampire versus magic what's-a-who's-its, she is probably the most human character in this cast of in this cast of vampires, and she still will not give a fuck. She, in one of my favorite scenes, crashes a car and faces down a whole horde of Nazis and declares herself that she will beat them and just pulls out a sword and fully believes that she will fight them. And I'm like,
well, that's what you need. You need someone who has that kind of, can ground you, because when, like, even though, as you said, Nazis have certain levels and vampires and magic and all that stuff, that's hard to tie onto. But just someone ballsy going for it, come on.
Yeah, like,
that's what you want.
Like Alucard, like, okay, we'll talk about Alucard now, because he is the icon of the series. He is the ultimate vampire, the proto-powerful, just godlike creature, and he was enjoyable to watch. And they gave him a little bit of depth at the end, kind of tying him into the Stoker mythology. But he was very one note. Like, as cool as he was, and watching him do anything was fantastic. Like, there's not a lot to kind of grab to as far as a character is concerned. Like, when you kind of boil it down to him, he is just a tool at Integra's to Integra's will.
Yeah, he's a big red coat and a gun, and that's it.
And that's it, yeah. But, like, to be fair, I would say that comparison is, probably most apt in Black Butler, where, you have a lot of crossover, where it's like, we don't have, and it's all cool and great, but when stuff needs to move along, you just have to, you just kind of have to roll with that. And that's what I think they knew. They're like, look, we have all these characters, we have, so let's just kind of push forward. And as you said, we have our human characters, we have our point of view characters, but with Alucard, like, he didn't really need to be anything more than that, so
no.
He does have the best introduction in an anime as well, so it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so good. As you said, a black coat and a gun, but my god, that makes for a introduction.
Like, I think even, like, Hirano probably realized he'd written himself just an absolutely overpowered character that could like cease any idea of tension and conflict in any scene, that he just had to put him on a boat off the English Channel for about a third of the story. Be like, no, you'll fix this too fast. You stay over there for a little bit. We'll bring you back in when we want a climax.
Actually, you know who he is? He's Captain Marvel in Endgame. I'm gonna disappear for a while. I'll show up at the end to help out. and that's kind of what he is, But that's the problem when you make these characters that are just too powerful.
As fun as they are, you need to kind of balance them. Like, you need to like, almost like I mentioned, you kind of need to use them as a tool and less of a character.
Absolutely.
I suppose, kind of moving on to that then, to kind of round out our core trio, we have who would be, I think the show tried to consider our point of view character in Alucard's first ever vampire apprentice in Ceres Victoria. And I gotta say, this is where I level one of my big criticism against this show, because Ceres is just not a character.
Yeah.
God, she just...
Someone had to suffer, and this is it.
Like, it's just, she does nothing for the better part of about 6 episodes until she is just kind of forced to level up. And then she has a couple of cool sight scenes, but as far as a character growth goes, she has nothing. And when I kind of actually stopped to think about that, I was like, oh wow, this is a lot of screen time given to nothing. Which, and I don't want to harp on with a comparison too much, but it's really shocking to me when I went and actually watched a few episodes of the 2001 animation. Because, and I don't know if it just got lost, if Hirano's manga had written her this way or if the 2001 staff gave her more agency, but she's a lot more proactive in that series and has like she acts more as a police officer, but now is a vampire. And I thought that was awesome, and it's strange to me they didn't carry any of that over.
That really sucked. Like as I said, you know, it was one of the more interesting things to do, to kind of have that extra element that was just kind of, it was very Hellboyish, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of cool to have something else to kind of hang on to, you know. But I think the reason why it was cool is because if you give her that agency, you know, solely where, you know, you have to kind of have her doing something, it takes away from your beauty shots and your more kind of like elaborate sequences that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, or could get convoluted. So I understand why they cut it. It's just kind of a bummer that they did.
Yeah, and I think I felt like it got compounded on by just how much the show relentlessly objectifies her to a really uncomfortable degree.
Oh yeah, well, that's the biggest change that I found was unnecessary. But you know, and it's, I don't know why they did it, but it's again, like, it's, you know, a trope of anime. Like even in Trinity Blood, there's some sexy looking nuns, you know, and that's, even though some of the main characters in it have all the agency and stuff, they're still hella objectified. So it's just like, well, it's anime. Is what it is, you know.
Yeah, I'm all for my fan service. I've watched my fair share of High School DxD, but like this, even this felt like too much to me.
Oh, I'm not defending it by any stretch of imagination, but I'm not surprised by it. Like, here's the thing. With rating, and one thing I learned as a teenager, which was very weird thing when you're getting into anime, it's like, if something is 12s, there's going to be a lot of violence in it. If something's 15s, there's going to be a lot of sex and violence in it. If it's 18s, it's like, wow, there's going to be at least one rape scene in it, and you know, and the rest. And that's a good rule of thumb to go by with anime.
If it's 18s, you're just watching Berserk.
Yeah.
Oh well, no. Legend of the Demon Womb and Legend of the Demon Seed. That's what gave me my rating. My rating list. I'm like, oh my god, what am I watching?
For me, it was absolutely Ninja Scroll. Like,
oh yeah,
and Ninja Scrolls, where the superpower is based solely on rape. Yeah. So it's just like, oh wow, okay. That was uncomfortable.
I still have my copy of it on DVD without the cover because I didn't want my parents to find it.
Well, here's the thing. You know what's funny, right? I got my copy of. Now, just started to go off on a tangent there.
That's fine.
But I got my copy through Manga Force, so it's a much more like sanitized cover. But then you bang it on, and it's all there, and you're like, well, there you go. It's just no warning, no nothing.
It happens like
just
5 times.
Here you go. It does, yeah.
Oh yeah,
different
Ninja
times,
Scroll,
I suppose.
Ninja Scroll, where even 15-year-olds who watch that were thinking to themselves, "Man, I'm too young to watch this."
Yeah.
Literally, that's when you're just sitting there going, "I really shouldn't be watching this." Like, it's just, there's no way.
Oh god. Okay. Well, so like as we kind of gone on to the as gone through the Hellsing cast, I suppose we'll touch on we touched on the accents, but how did we all feel about the Nazis? I suppose because that was the thing that caught me off guard when I first watched the original series and then watched Ultimate.
Everything needs Nazis as bad guys. This is a thing that we've lost, right? Everybody's like, oh, the Nazis are so bad and they're so evil. It's like, no, Nazis are hilarious and you want to see them being killed. You've lost this. Fucking Wolfenstein understood this. Anime until like 10 years understood this. Give me more Nazi bad guys who can be killed in fun ways because they're hilarious.
And I suppose I think we'll broach this off the top. I have no relation from these guys to the white supremacy movement. These guys are Saturday morning cartoon villains with a Nazi flag on them.
Of course they are. That's why it's hilarious.
They're stormtroopers.
Like,
wonderful.
They're stormtroopers. Yeah, but that's, you know, this is the problem with the whole, you know, politicization of it. It's like, stop, listen. I come from a time where Nazi communist was a joke on The Simpsons, and they're a comedy, you know, where they were just a bad supervillain kind of thing, and that's what they were, and it's great. Like these guys had a. It's not in Trinity Blood, which sucks. It would have been improved by it. But like, there's some, you know, like I love playing Wolfenstein, the new ones, and that's fun too. Because anytime you get to see these cartoonish, ridiculous things made fun of, and then also killed in satisfying ways, it's a good thing, you know. And it's something that we've lost sight of. We need more of this.
Oh yeah, and with how colorful and cartoonish the villains that were set up in this were, it was enjoyable to watch them just get stomped on. Like we have
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's run through our roster here. We have the mad scientist who is wearing a pair of glasses with like 8 lenses for no reason. We have a cat boy who
to show how evil he was. We have a
cat boy who exists everywhere and nowhere, literally as just a personification of Schrodinger's cat. We have a man that seems pulled straight out of Twilight before Twilight existed. What's his name? Colonel something. It's lost on me. But the guy that doesn't say anything and just becomes a wolfman out of nowhere. Zorin Blitz, who is ridiculous in simply just the fact that she is an illusionist in a vampire series. There's something about that, just like, you are a top general and you are just an illusionist of trickery, and you have a scythe. Why do you have a scythe?
But here's the thing though, Kev, right? Like the Nazis in this, like in popular culture up until a couple of years ago, they all pulled on like what the SS would have done with the, you know, with their occult division.
Oh yeah.
We thought they were like knights from the Middle Ages and all that mad shit. So it's just like, and the bell and all that kind of stuff, you know, where it's just like, yeah, look, all that stuff is crazy. Let's look into it, you know, and all that stuff from the 20s. And that's kind of what the Japanese creators of these series really got obsessed with. So they're like, yeah, look, this is bad. We can really do stuff with this. And it's not even Japan. Like, same with Wolfenstein. That's what it's based on, right? The whole.
This is what Philip K. Dick. That's what Philip K. Dick did with Man in the High Castle.
Man in the High Castle. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of juice to get from that as well, because you can create these absolutely larger than life, crazy supervillains who have a clear motivation. But it's also really satisfying because you're like, well, you're a Nazi, so
I guess, you know, let's just watch you get thrown. Let's just watch you get your face ground against a wall like sandpaper for a minute. God bless that scene.
Absolutely. But then there's, you know, it's literally the appeal of Wolfenstein. You know, that's still going, and it's sad that there's nothing similar to this. Like, again, as I said, watching Hellsing, it was my first kind of exposure to this, you know, because obviously I was just like, oh, why are Nazis here? Oh, okay, and then you're like, oh, this is what they're doing, and it's kind of, yeah, I think it's very of its time as well, because like, unless you were alive around this time, you didn't really kind of get through that. Something kind of happened where it was lost and people start taking them seriously again, and you're like, nah, this is, you know. But yeah, at least we have this in a little time capsule where stuff was fun.
Oh, this feels like a remnant from that, like just kind of the last gasps of the kind of the late 80s, early 90s movement, where just, you know, the Akira bubble, where you just kind of get away with, like, it was just all of these insane creatives trying to just pull the craziest stuff they could before tropes really started getting a hold of the genre. And norms,
there was no limits.
Norms started forming. Yeah,
no limits. Yeah.
There was no
no limits to creativity, which is always the best way.
The otaku market had really just kind of only started thriving, so tropes and sellable niches hadn't quite busted through, so it was all pure creativity.
But also, again, I would say this has got to do with the internet as well. Like, when this stuff starts spreading, it was kind of harder to be like, oh, we haven't seen this before. It kind of, as you said, the tropes kind of took off and it went off in some way. And, you know, it was what it was. But I don't know. I think it's a very clever way to write bad guys, you know, because there's so much you can do. There is no limit. Like I know if I was writing a vampire series, you'd have to. Like it's what they did. Like again, you know, I hate to keep jumping around so much, but look at the closest comparison I can say for anyone who hasn't seen Hellsing, but is familiar with like Western archetypes. Hellboy, Hellboy literally does the same thing, where but instead of pulling from a Japanese standpoint, it pulls from a more English standpoint. And still, who are your main bad guys in that? Literally, Nazis, occult Nazis.
Yeah, it's actually, you know what?
But you know,
It's
it's there.
a far more
Still there.
accurate comparison than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Jesus, Darragh, you're on to
So,
something.
Yeah.
well,
Hellsing, Hellboy.
Hellboy.
My God, you cracked the code.
They both have big guns and they're something red. Except for Hellboy's the
It was
skin.
there in front of us the whole. It was there in front of us the whole time.
Oh God, and I think that the cast of primary antagonists, we'll say, in the Nazis was definitely rounded out by, of course, the Major, who is like, okay,
Yes.
Nazi aside, is a particular sort of bad guy you don't see a lot of nowadays, and that upsets me. In a bad guy that just reaches for chaos, the pure anarchist. This is a man who, in his essence, won. He achieved chaos and destruction. He like killing him, like beating him at this point doesn't matter, because even you killing him achieves what he thinks is right. And there was just, and again, I know we harped on about the German. Sorry, Darragh, I'll let you go in a sec. I know we harped on about the German accents, but there was something special about just how intense I don't have his name in front of me, but how his actor went, and it was, for short of a better word, compelling in an oddly macabre way.
Well, they're the best villains. That's why, because you actually believe that they're real characters. You know, like that. As you said, that's the problem with Alucard, because he's so one-dimensional. He doesn't really have a character. These people, like these people who embody drive, an incentive, a motive, they're way more compelling. And the Major's like, wow, this man believes what he's doing. He really enjoys, and he's just really, really compelling to watch, because you're like, is he going to do it? Is he going to get beaten? Oh wait,
so
did he
much
actually
energy.
win? And they're really interesting questions. Absolutely.
Keith, do you have anything to add? Actually,
Not really. Like Darragh's just completely blown my mind with his comparisons here. I'm just like,
you're just you're stewing in the Hellsing Hellboy comparison.
For the most part, all I can really talk about the shows. Well, for one, I loved seeing Schrodinger getting her head blown up multiple times. That was the best.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this show, like, plot wise, I'm just like, I don't really know what happened. It was just lots of cool stuff, you know.
Yeah. I think plot kind of comes secondary. Like that was the main thing. Yeah.
I don't really know where to talk about my like nitpicks and stuff. As you were saying, the villains are super cartoony and super fun, and there's just a huge charm to a show that's like, our main character doesn't have a character. That's fine. He's just going to shoot a load of Nazis and you can laugh.
Yeah, and to be fair, you know, when I sat down to watch this, I really didn't know what I'd expect. 4 or 5 years out from, you know, even touching it. But I had a great time. You know, I was just like, yeah, this is super fun. It's nice to have on in the background. You can stop it for a bit and watch the lovely, beautiful set pieces. And like there's nothing there that's offensive. Well, there is a lot of stuff that's offensive, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean in the sense of like, there's nothing where you're sitting there going, "Oh, this is terrible," or "This insults my intelligence," because you check all that stuff at the door and you're like, "I'm going to see this vampire shoot people," and everyone has a good time.
And here's the thing that I about a week ago I sat down with Kean and tried and just chatted with him about it. And this is the kind of the wall I came up against when I was trying to write my notes for it. This is watching this for the replay for the show was the second time watching it. Where the first time I watched it, thoroughly enjoyed it. And now thinking I was have to watch it through a critical eye to make notes of it to talk about it. You absolutely should not think of this show through a critical eye. This is not how you watch it.
No, absolutely not. That's the thing. Like, everything is open to critical theory. Not everything is open up to dissection. It's just stupid and dumb, but in a fun way. And that's the thing about anime. Exactly. Yeah, like, weebs need to calm down, lads. It's fine. Oh, it's grand. It's like watching a Marvel movie. Some aren't good, some are okay, but most are just to sit there to eat popcorn to.
Yeah.
That's it. Like this, get high and watch Hellsing if you want to. Yeah, not something personally I do, but hey, I suppose that would be a really good way to watch it. Keith, did it help?
There you go. The show itself, though, I don't think needs that. I think it's just pure Saturday morning fun that shouldn't be
for sure.
On Saturday morning. It's actually, maybe it should be.
Yeah, it's like
fun.
I don't know, like like anime in general that kind of skirts that line is quite graphic. Like, even watching Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, which we totally should do a show on. It was like, okay, this might be crossing a couple of lines when you really think about it. As you said, Kev, thinking about it from a critical standpoint. But it's a lot of fun. This has no redeeming critical aspects to it. It is just really fun and really violent.
Yeah.
And that's it. And those two things don't negate each other. They actually. Like, I think my question is, if they had to take, all right, so just say they were going to take some of the violence down and kind of add in those layers, where would you add them? Like Kev, what would you add to the show?
No, God, nothing. Like, I would not give up any second of blood, any drop of blood in this show for more plot development. Jesus, God, no. Because that takes away the point of this show. This show is just here, like, it is here to be enjoyed. And like, as I said, as many critiques as I would level against it, given that, depending on the personality of the person I'm recommending it to, I would recommend this to most anyone looking for
everyone.
Like a lot of kind of hardcore action horror. It is absolutely, again, like, I've got major criticisms to get to, sure, that's personal bias, but like, in terms of literary critique, I can name a dozen. I'm still gonna watch it again.
What I would say is, right, if people are looking for a more if people are looking for a more satisfying series with something to say, that's similar to it, Trinity Blood's a much better series and much more enjoyable, and it has future Vatican, which makes it brilliant.
Did you just agree to be on this episode so you could push Trinity Blade on everyone?
Look, that might be an element of it, but most people don't know what Trinity Blood is, and that makes me really sad. And I think Hellsing gets the better gets those fans. So yeah, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not on the show purely to push Trinity Blood, but that's a factor for sure.
I mean, okay, if I'm going to if you want to watch Hellsing, you could also watch Castlevania. That's kind of, I think in the year we're in now, that's also
Castlevania is so much better.
Yeah,
as a show.
In terms of that's the thing. If you want good gory vampire content with actual story, go to Castlevania. But that does not discount Hellsing.
But it doesn't have the.
It doesn't have the
Yeah,
Nazis.
like here's the thing, like it doesn't have the charm. You know, Castlevania is very mass produced. It's very, very safe. You know, I think with Hellsing, it's very okay. Forgive the term. It's edgy. It has a roughness to it. It's like when you're listening to a band's demo or to like this weird, you know, this weird black metal record. You're like, ooh, look, this is weird. They don't really know what they're doing, but damn, they have spunk. You know,
no, you've hit the nail on the head. Hellsing is absolutely edgy. Hellsing is your 14-year-old cousin who just discovered Gorgoroth and thinks they are the coolest thing on the planet. And there is a charm to that.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And, you know, Castlevania, while it has a much better story to it, it doesn't have that charm. It's really good, and I'd recommend it. If you're a fan of Hellsing or if you're a fan of Castlevania, you'll really enjoy both. There's a lot of crossover to be had, but it doesn't have that charm. You know, it's missing the zazz, which is important.
Does anybody do either of you guys have any final thoughts on it?
No, yeah.
Watch it.
I was just about to say, like, all three of us seem to have really enjoyed it, but also seem to have a different show. I recommend the Vampire Hunter D movies. Darragh's clearly gunning for Trinity Blade, and Kev, you're mad for the Castlevania. So that's 4 shows you can go watch and have fun.
That's it.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Like
if you are into your vampire media, you've come away from this podcast with a plethora.
Exactly.
And from different time periods too, because they're all very different. They're all very different shows. Like Blood the Last Vampire, like for example, Blood the Last Vampire is completely different to all these because that's a modern day vampire story. These are more kind of hyper high fantasy, more like more bourgeois lording shows, you know, where they're like
very
police
gothic.
force and royal, like police force and royalty and churches and all that shit, compared to like some girl with a katana walking around Japan, you know. So yeah, I think if you're into the gothic, that's it. If you're into a gothic vampire story that's hyper violent, man, this is like, you gotta watch it. I would say the original one, the actual one from 2000, 2001, 2002, because of what was actually omitted. I think they're a cool little compendium. Like if you want an introduction, I would say the best thing to do is kind of watch it. It's like the reverse of what you do with Full Metal Alchemist. You just never watch anything but Brotherhood.
Okay, yeah, I was going to save this to the end because I wanted to save this to the end because I didn't want to bog down the whole podcast with it. I fucking love the original. Right. Even like, regardless of story, as a piece of directorial animation, I think it is stunning. The way where Ultimate is a lot of like heavy 3D animation, the deep saturations of red and blue in original Hellsing are gorgeous, and its jazz-infused soundtrack has so much character that I think actually, I think where there's a tonal mishmash in Ultimate, kind of flipping between like kind of new wave music and a lot of orchestral stuff, but never quite hit a balance. That cool, sweet jazz of the original is amazing.
Well, see, that's because it's a much more focused story. Like they probably knew from the get-go, hey, we have this very limited remit. Let's just go and try to make something that's cohesive. And you can tell that like what they chose to pick and what they chose to emphasize was part of a bigger whole, compared to like Ultimate, which, you know, as we talked about, 6 years is a long time. You know, 8 years is an even longer time. So, you know, you're going to just change tastes or whatever, and it's not going to have that cohesive feel because it's different teams, different people, and, you know, that's just obviously going to lose stuff. But yeah, like, listen, if I'd say a lot of people who watch Ultimate are like, okay, well, what do I watch now? Well, you know, go back and watch the original, you know, compare it and see what you like, and then from there go out and watch the other stuff, because it's all on A lot of it's on Netflix. A lot of it's on other streaming services. It's not hard to find. And then, of course, for educational purposes, theoretically, you could, sail the high seas and find the rest.
Yeah, theoretically.
Which I couldn't do. I actually bought all the DVDs. So, damn it.
I think, in my opinion, I think if our conversations have struck interest in you, I would recommend watching the original Hellsing first and then jumping into Ultimate, because both are very enjoyable. Now, original's only about 13 episodes. It's very short and it's very digestible. And then Ultimate's, as I said, 10 episodes, but 10 long episodes. It's not that long when you actually when you dig into it. So, where in the year of our Lord 2020 is Hellsing now? So, after while he was producing the Hellsing manga, he went off. Kota Hirano, the author, went off and created a couple of spin-off mangas, namely the Hellsing Crossfire and Hellsing the Dawn. So Crossfire follows Heinkel Wolf and Yumi Takagi, who are two members of the Iscariot under Alexander Anderson, kind of facing their own challenges. And we did not talk about these guys at all. But that's an incentive to watch the show, because this was an entire third party in the show. We mentioned at the start, who are the Catholic Church as an opposing force. So if that's
yes, this is it's fun. It's fun.
It's very fun.
Really good.
Now,
and in my head canon, it's the other side of Trinity Blood. So.
Now, Crossfire, it only ran for 3 chapters before being discontinued. So, it's there if you want to kind of dip in if you really like Hellsing. Otherwise, then there is The Dawn, which is a prequel series taking place where Alucard, who's a young lady, because he just kind of can be, during World War II with the Hellsing family butler, Walter Dornez, as they are hunting Nazis in World War II and end up going against the Nazi Millennium Organization. So the series...
Do you see how cool that is? I'm sorry. That sounds
Darragh wants more Nazis.
Of course there is more Nazis.
I'm sorry. That's the coolest thing ever. Get creative, people. Come on.
Now, this one ran for 6 chapters back in 2009, then went on hiatus while Hirano focused on working with the series. And while he said there was plans to pick it back up after the release of the finale of Ultimate, that hasn't happened. And Kota Hirano has then went on to produce a whole new series, a manga series called Drifters, which is also completely bonkers. If you guys haven't heard of this thing, it is a battle royale featuring a variety of historical war figures like Joan of Arc and yeah, there's Nazis, of course there are.
Is this like a spin-off to Bill and Ted? Imagine.
Jeez, man, that could be wild. So I
cool.
suppose, well, I think that's about us now. So I open the floor. Keith, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, if you are an edgy 16-year-old, wants to see a vampire shoot other vampires and have nothing really bad happen to him, I highly recommend the show. I just recommend the show to everyone. I think it's fun. It's my first time watching it, and I'm definitely going to watch the original now. I'll probably watch this again, actually. Yeah, just watch it. It's good. You won't have to think, but you'll have lots of fun.
Right, and Darragh, anything you would like to wrap us up with?
Yeah, I kind of echo that. I'm just, if you're only getting into this genre and you're listening to this show and you're using that as kind of like a start, this is kind of a series that would be in the where to start. Very much so. It's up there with Akira and stuff like that, where you're just like, oh, I have to watch these ones. And it's not a bad place to kind of, if someone was to show me this as my first anime, I would be okay with it. I think it made me want to watch more because it kind of has everything you really want, and it deserves its reputation. So if you haven't seen it, absolutely check it out. And there's a lot of good recommendations there as well to kind of work through. But definitely, its reputation is well deserved.
Awesome, yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, Hellsing Ultimate is currently available for streaming on Netflix and on Funimation's site, and also on Funimation is the original Hellsing if you want to get the whole saga in on it together. Well, this was fantastic, guys. Thanks for being on. Well, I suppose while I ask for things to plug, the two of you together have at least one big plug.
Yeah. Darragh and I are in a band called Horrenda together, the black metal band. If you like edgy things like Hellsing, you'll probably like it. We just released a new album, and we've our first music video coming out with Cosmo Palace, and yeah, it's actually exciting stuff.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
For sure. And you know, if you want to really help us out, go over to our Bandcamp and buy stuff.
There'll be new stuff appearing very soon, actually. Probably beginning of next month.
Yeah,
so
it's gonna be fun.
Keep an eye peeled.
Oh yeah, no, I'm stoked.
So, yeah,
I think what you guys are doing. Sorry, I think what you guys are doing is fucking incredible. Obviously, you can see more of Darragh across the network. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Nerd to Know Basis, Wrestling Rewind, From the Dark. He's all over the place. He's always cropping up.
Yeah, for my sins.
You can also see more of me on the network. I crop up from time to time on various different shows, but you can also follow me on Twitter at KelvTalica94. This has been Anime Crash Course, and we will see you guys all next month. Thanks very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.